Hey Freshies, today's assignment is the measurement practice worksheet. So obviously if you're watching this video, you are working from home because you are not here today. Your learning targets, I can use appropriate units to properly measure temperature, length, volume, and mass. And I can accurately measure the volume, mass, length, and temperature of an object. So we will be going over this tomorrow in class. So make sure if you were gone, you guys have this done so we can get corrected for you guys. And you guys can have some feedback as to how you did. Okay, so first things first, you guys will need to add to your note sheet. Okay, this is already included for you guys. So you'll just have to fill in some blanks on this part here. Okay, in science and in most of the world, we use the metric system. And so we use SI units for those. So to measure length, we use meters as our base unit. Okay, volume, we use liters as our base unit, and you might also see cubic centimeters. Those are the same things. Okay, mass, we use grams, abbreviated with the lowercase g. Pay attention to capitalization, that really matters here. And then temperature, technically kelvins. Okay, it's not degrees Kelvin, it's just kelvins. Or degrees Celsius is our main thing, and we'll talk about those when we get to the temperature unit. Okay, then to add to your guys' notes, these are some notes about measuring each of these 4 different quantities. So length, we're going to use a meter stick or a ruler. Okay, centimeters, little c, little m, meters, or millimeters are going to be our main units that we use. You'll also see kilometers if we're using really long distances. Make sure you guys use the appropriate unit. So if you're measuring something really, really small, use the smallest unit, right? We want to get it to the smallest number possible. But if you're using something large, again, go as small as you can with your numbers. So we're going to want to use a larger unit. Okay, volume is how much space matter takes up. For that, we're going to use liters with a capital L or milliliters, little m, big L. For liquids, measure to the bottom of the meniscus. So liquids kind of have a sticky property between their molecules. So when we pour them into a graduated cylinder, the molecules will stick to the sides and kind of make a little curve. It almost looks like when you're looking at it, it has 2 lines. You guys are going to measure to the bottom of that. That's the meniscus. So find the bottom of those kind of 2 looking lines and hit the bottom. That's your accurate measurement. Okay, a graduated cylinder is going to be the most accurate for measuring volume. And again, we have different sizes of graduated cylinders, so make sure you use ones that's most appropriate. Okay, down here to mass is the quantity of matter in an object. You're going to use a gram scale or a triple beam balance. Okay, you guys will get some practice with both. We're not going to use the triple beam balance a ton in class, but you guys will eventually mainly just use an electronic gram scale. Okay, mode, we're always going to make sure we're doing grams for that. So if we're using the electronic scale, make sure that it has a little G on the screen. If it says like OZ or LB, okay, those are the wrong units. So make sure you guys hit mode until it changes. And then before you weigh anything, you're always going to want to make sure your scale reads 0. If you're using something to measure, like a little weight boat, you want to put that on the scale first, then hit 0. We just want to measure what we're putting in the weight boat. We don't want to measure the weight boat itself. Okay, so put the weight boat on the scale, hit 0, and then anything you add to it at that point is going to be the mass of whatever you're measuring. Okay, and then finally, temperature is going to be the average kinetic energy of an object. The unit's going to be in degrees Celsius for us in class, but again, we'll also talk a little bit about Kelvin and absolute 0 and what that means. Be careful, some thermometers have numbers on both sides of the line. Think about what makes sense. Okay, so if you guys notice on your notes, you guys have a little diagram that shows you guys in degrees Celsius that body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. It boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Room temperature is about 20 degrees Celsius. So if you guys are measuring something that's warmer, okay, and you look at it and say it's 10 degrees Celsius, okay, that might not make sense. So again, use this kind of benchmarks that we have, that 0 freezing, 20 degree room temperature, 37 body temperature, and 100 degree boiling to kind of help you guys think about what makes sense with your temperatures. Okay, your bell ringer for today. Which tool would you use to measure the exact volume of water in a cup? Okay, use the highlighter and the draw tool. And then which unit is most appropriate to measure the mass of a paperclip? Again, use the highlighter and the draw tool. So you guys will work through that. Okay. Then why is the metric system preferred in science instead of the imperial or English system? Because there's only a couple countries that use the imperial English system, and even in those countries like America, we still use metric for all of science. okay? So it's still very widely used. Okay, your first section of this is going to be length. Okay, for these, you guys are going to tell me the base unit for length. So you guys are looking for anywhere there's pink writing. Okay, that's where you're going to need to type an answer. So the base unit for length. And then for this section here, you guys are going to give me the abbreviation. So we can see meter is a little m. Okay, so give me the correct abbreviations here. Make sure you guys capitalize properly. Okay, for instance, liter, the big L is always capitalized versus meter. Notice that that's lowercase. So make sure your guys' PowerPoint isn't autocorrect on you. Okay, this one, you guys are going to fill in a unit here. So we can see centimeter, meter, and then you guys are going to kind of fill in that blank here. This one, we're looking for the numbers, so you guys are going to fill in that blank. Okay. When measuring length, you typically will have a ruler or meter stick like the image above. Each of the numbers on this ruler represents, so that's the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is that if we're using the correct system of measurement? Okay, you're going to answer after right here. You don't have to put anything in the blank. There are blank lines, so give me the number of lines in between the numbers 0 and 1. So how many there? Okay, each line is 1/10 of a centimeter, meaning that each little line represents 1. So what is that as far as a measurement? What is that as far as a measurement? Okay, again, answer right here. You guys can definitely do abbreviations. That's okay. A meter stick is 1 meter long, meaning it has how many centimeters and how many millimeters. If you guys want, grab a meter stick and take a look. Okay, always make sure to measure the object starting from. So a lot of people will start from the end of the meter stick, but that's not correct. Take a closer look, okay, what the end of a meter stick might look like. Okay, so answer that question as well. Okay, what is the diameter or length of one end of the other of this emoji? Okay, if it ends in between lines, make sure you guys give a decimal estimate. So this one asks you guys in centimeters, so you're going to have a decimal there. And then how many milliliters or millimeters, so you're going to be counting the little dashes. Okay, no decimal for this one. So decimal on the first one. In fact, I'll just add that in. And then here, no decimal. Okay, this one, same thing. You guys are measuring the length. If you guys need to, go down to the bottom and you guys can kind of zoom in and do it that way. Okay. And then over here, you're going to tell me how many centimeters, how many milliliters. Again, notice the little thing that says in decimals here. Okay, so that's pencil A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, moving on to volume. Most of the world, basically all the world in science, uses the metric system. So what's our base unit for volume? Okay, so again, we talked about that in our notes. You guys can go back and check. These are abbreviations. So here's KL, so tell me what that stands for, and then what's the abbreviation for milliliter. Capitalization matters. Notice the capital L here, but the lowercase k here. Okay, and then this one, you're going to fill in the number. If we have 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters, then 1 kiloliter is how many liters? Okay. When measuring volume of a liquid, you will need to locate the meniscus. I already kind of talked about this in the notes. So this is kind of a two-dimensional version of that. If you're looking at it three-dimensional, it's almost like it has 2 lines. You're going to measure to the bottom of that line. That's the bottom of the meniscus. So answer these questions here. Again, you don't need to fill in the blank. You guys are going to answer in the pink. So your guys' answer should be in pink. Okay. And then what is the volume of the water to the right? So read that volume there. Again, if it seems to be in between lines, make sure you guys estimate a decimal. Okay. These are all milliliters that you guys will see here. So your answer will be in milliliters. Okay, same with these 3. These will all be in milliliters. Again, if your bottom of your meniscus kind of seems to be in between any numbers, you guys are going to measure and estimate a decimal. Okay, for this one, you guys are going to need to use your draw tool to give me a hint there. So remember with your draw tool, if you hold the shift key down, you'll be able to draw a straight line. Oops, I messed that one up. Okay, so you guys can do that to draw a straight line. You guys can also go insert and then go shapes and draw a straight line with that as well. Okay, so anytime you guys use the draw tool, make sure you click back on the cursor. So make sure you don't have to do the curve for the meniscus. You guys can just give me a straight line for those. So draw a line to indicate a volume of 0.7, 45.2, and 94. Okay, you guys don't need to fill in anything below. Make sure your line is a color that I can actually see. Okay, learn how to measure the volume of irregularly shaped objects here. So I found you guys a corny little video to watch. It's not very long. If you don't already know how to do water displacement, make sure you guys watch that video. Here's kind of a little equation for you, and then here's some examples where you guys can see. Here's the original volume. Here's the volume after I've placed the irregular shaped object in them, and then what's the final volume for that irregularly shaped object, so the pencil, the sharpener, and the eraser. Okay, for these, you're going to do measurements for the volume, so you guys will need a calculator for the most part. So you guys can use your phone or whatever the case is. You guys will calculate their volume. For this one, your guys' units are going to be centimeter cube, not milliliters. Okay, and then moving on to mass, same thing here. What's the abbreviation for milligram? You can see gram, and then what's this one abbreviated for, and then what's the number that would correspond to this little conversion here. Okay, mass is different than weight. Your mass never changes, where your weight is dependent on gravity. So mass and weight are not the same thing. So read this question here. If you guys had me last year, this should be familiar to you. Okay. Here is a triple beam balance. You guys can see it all labeled out. You guys can expand that picture if you can't see it, but you guys will use this image and the little labels on this image to help you answer these questions. So move all the blank to 0. The pointer should not be at 0. The pointer should be at 0. If it is not, use the 0 adjustment screw until the arrow points to 0. Place the object where, starting with the largest writer, determine the possible ranges for the mass, starting with the heaviest. So you would start with the 100 here, or excuse me, the 100 here. Okay, and then continue moving all the blank until the pointer returns back to 0. The mass writers must be in a notch for the 10 and 100 beams. The ones writer can be in between numbers. Okay, so again, you're not answering in the blanks. You guys are answering afterwards as answer. Okay, then you're going to practice reading a triple beam balance. So these are all in grams. Okay, and there's 4 to do there. This one, you guys are going to grab these little arrows. Those are going to represent the writers, and you're going to kind of stick those little triangles where it should be to indicate a mass of 156.4 grams and 282.8 grams. Okay, and then finally, temperature. In higher level sciences, they will often require temperature to be measured in kelvins. Kelvin is based on absolute 0, and there is no such thing as a negative Kelvin. Technically, absolute 0 is a theoretical thing because it would be the point at which no energy exists. There's no motion of molecules. All life seems to exist. Okay, but where does the energy go? So it's theoretical. So we'll never see a negative Kelvin value. Where molecules stop moving, there's no longer energy. To calculate Kelvin, you would add 273 degrees Celsius. So if we have 0 degrees Celsius, that's equal to 273 kelvins. Again, not a degree there. If we have kelvins, we would subtract 273 to get degrees Celsius. Okay. And then for this one, the temperature itself is made of a small hollow blank tube and is filled with a colored blank. So 2 answers there. When heat increases the liquid blank, pushing the liquid up. When heat blank, the liquid contracts. So kind of use those 2 to help you guys out. They're opposites there, moving down the tube. So that kind of explains to you guys how a temperature or a thermometer works. Okay, and then finally, you guys are going to do some readings. Again, if you guys notice the red liquid in between little dashes, you guys need to estimate a decimal there. So you guys will answer these questions, temperature in degrees Celsius. And then finally, your exit ticket. Which of the following is the best unit to measure the length of a pencil? And then which unit is most appropriate to measure the mass of a human? Okay, so you guys will answer those using your draw tool. You can just grab a little highlighter. And that's your guys' assignment for today. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If not, good luck, and we'll go through this next time you're in class. Have a great day. Bye.